so we're going to record the program and then we'll make it available for broadcast later. And I posted a note on the webpage for anybody who refreshes their screen. They will see that we apologized for not being able to do the live broadcast, but the good news is you're here and we'll be able to do the program. And I would like to welcome everybody, and I wanted to welcome all the folks who are Jester residents that are going to participate in this program by watching the video, folks from around Austin, and folks ultimately nationwide who will be watching this as hopefully a way to communicate the wildfire safety message to their communities. So my name's Jeff Shapiro, and I'm the chairman of the Jester Firewise Committee in Austin, Texas. I'm also a fire protection engineer, and I'm joined today by Josh Anderson, the captain with the Austin Fire Department and the Wildfire Division, who has helped immensely with this. And also like to recognize the contributions of Lake Travis Fire for hosting us at Station 605, which was the first in station on the Steiner Ranch fire back in 2011. So certainly want to begin by saying to everybody that our thoughts and prayers are with the folks out in California who are currently suffering, the people who live out there, the firefighters. It's an extraordinary fire season in California this year with thousands of homes being lost to wildfire, and it's timely for us to talk about the subject because certainly that is something that we could see in Austin, we have seen in the Austin region, and we've been lucky enough to dodge that fire for a long time, but you never know when something like that would potentially happen here. A couple things that I want to make sure our folks in Jester understand, since they're my target audience for tonight, is understand that there is always a wildfire risk in Jester, and there is something that we can do about it. A lot of people just think that it's a risk that you have to accept. You don't have to accept wildfire risk. There's a lot of things you can do to protect your family and your home and save your property from wildfire. So Josh, I'll let you speak for a bit, and you can introduce why Austin Fire Department has a sim table.
All right. So the main reason that the Austin Fire Department acquired a sim table through a FEMA grant was to provide training to our community in understanding what their risk is in relationship to wildfire. As Jeff mentioned, there's a lot of things that you as homeowners can do to reduce your wildfire risk. And so the sim table is a tool that allows us to kind of play, so to speak, having a fire in your neighborhood to kind of show what that reality could look like. And the other piece of the sim table is providing our responders an opportunity to respond to a fire in a particular neighborhood, in a particular troubled area, so that they can better understand how their actions affect the fire behavior itself and how we can be better prepared in the event of a wildfire in your neighborhood. Thanks.
So with that, I'll start the formal presentation that we have, which is based on a PowerPoint program. And my cover slide here will give you some perspective on why I personally have an interest in wildfire safety, because the photo on the left is the front of my house, and the photo on the right is the aerial shot of my house, circled in red. And if you take a look to the back of my house, you'll see that I actually sit right on top of a ridge. The Jester neighborhood is a plateau surrounded by natural habitat that is mostly untreated. So if we have a fire in those canyon areas on my side of the neighborhood, I'm in serious trouble, and I think you'll probably see today that even if the fire is on the other side of the neighborhood, we're all in serious trouble, just because of the nature of the way the terrain is in Jester and the fact that we are limited access and surrounded by fuel. So our purpose today is not to scare anyone about wildfire concerns, but we have to face the facts. And the fact is that our neighborhood, like many in Austin, is at high risk of wildfire, a catastrophic wildfire. And we're surrounded by wildland. We have to accept the fact that wildfires cannot be entirely prevented. There are a lot of things that we can do. Smokey the Bear will tell you that lots of things you can do to hopefully prevent forest fires. But the reality is we're not going to be able to prevent all fires. The big problem that we have in Jester, like a lot of communities, is that most homes and residents are not prepared for a wildfire. And it's a fact that there is no fire department in the country that is capable of protecting the risk that we face in Jester if a catastrophic wildfire comes through. They can't get the resources there fast enough. And the problem is that the day that there's a fire that may involve Jester, it's going to involve a lot of other communities because there's going to be more than one on a bad fire day. And resources are going to be strapped, aerial resources may be unavailable, and certainly putting fire apparatus and personnel into an area like Jester where it's very constrained is highly risky. And it's our responsibility as a community, and I'm talking to the residents of Jester, it's our responsibility as a community to do what we can to help protect our homes and to help assist the fire department in being able to protect our homes. So there's a lot of things that we can do as a community to reduce fire risk. There are many things that our individual homeowners can do to reduce fire risk. Contrary to what a lot of people think, this is not about clear cutting all the trees on your lawn. It's amazing how often I get that question that, you know, what do I have to do, cut down all my trees? And the answer is absolutely not. There are things that you can do to trees to make them a lot more fire safe, and we'll talk about that later on in the program, as well as the things that we can do as a community to help reduce risk. So it's an interesting time of year. It's December and it's snowing in Austin, Texas, and we're talking about wildfire risk, but the timing is great because there's no better time to deal with this than when it's cold and wet as opposed to when it's hot, dry, and windy. And now is the time that people need to be taking action. And particularly in Jester, where we have to deal with bird nesting season, we have to deal with the oak wilt season, this is a great time of year for us to take preventive action. But a lot of people think, well, it's raining, so everything's fine. The moisture's back up, everything is green, it's not going to burn, it's all good. And that was actually the case in September 2010 when Tropical Storm Hermine came through Austin, Texas, and we were rescuing people in inflatable boats. Roads were flooded, neighborhoods were flooded. Reminds you of this year in Texas, right? And then what happened? 1 year later, in September 2011, rain led to plants, led to drought, led to wildfire, fuel. Everything that's growing now as a result of the rain that we've had is eventually going to end up as dry fuel. And there's going to be a time when the rain stops and the drought starts and the winds kick up and the temperature kicks up, and it doesn't even require the temperature. We can have pretty good wildfires in this part of the world even in the winter if it's dry and windy. So bottom line is, 1 year later, we ended up with some catastrophic fires, Bastrop and Steiner Ranch. So we're going to start a simulation on the Steiner Ranch fire. This occurred in September 2011, Labor Day weekend. And remember, it was 1 year after catastrophic floods hit Austin. And that's where we're going to be in about 9 months from now. So we'll start the simulation of the fire in the Steiner Ranch. So pull up the sim table.
All right, so as you can kind of orient yourself, the road across the top is 620, and that's north on the map there. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a fire had started up around 620 and begins to progress towards the south. Winds are out of the north, blowing towards the south, ranging from anywhere 15 to 30 miles an hour, gusting up to 40 miles an hour, pushing this fire.
And ahead of the fire are embers. And I'm going to show you a video that was shot in the neighborhood.
There's their house. Oh good, their cars are gone.
So,
okay, I don't know if I can get down to our street. We're down the bottom of that hill. This looks too far. Oh my God.
Fences on fire.
This is insane.
What's happening with the trees? None of the trees are burning right now. What's burning? It's the homes and the grass and the small things that are up against the homes themselves. Some of the houses are starting to burn because those embers have landed there. And as the fires, that I have, that's a simulation that's going on here on the table. If we get a chance, we'll toggle back and look at it. But just an opportunity to kind of see what is actually happening in the neighborhood while this fire is progressing. So,
God. Oh, John's house is on fire now.
the homes are already burning. Kind of got a good approximation of trying to put the fire perspective next to what's happening in the neighborhood. The fire that you see
So far we've been saved.
stimulated
Spared.
is being sped up. So you can look at the bottom of the clock. The clock itself is what's going on. So it's about 6 o'clock in the evening. So every second that ticks by, a minute in real time is happening with the fire and how large it is. And where it's, how large,
John's house
how
has
fast
been
it's growing.
so.
The embers have gotten into the attic and are starting to burn the house from the outside in.
Alright. Jeff's house okay. John's house.
So we have sent, now the fire progression that we're seeing on the map itself has gone past the time of what's happening in the CNN video in the upper left-hand
David
corner.
Heather's is about
But
gone.
these are kind of some of the correlations that we've kind of got going on here.
Ali
So
and
as the
Donna's
sim
house is
continues
okay
to
so far.
play out,
Ours
we're
is still
now
okay so far.
9 o'clock at night,
just grabbed a
9:30
bunch
in
of-
the evening.
I'm getting out of
The
here.
fire, as you noticed, has started to slow down. Happening, weather is changing. The weather is driving, was initially driving the fire, and as the night came in, our temperatures went down, our winds went down, and our fire started to slow down. So, we'll let this kind of play out to the final footprint. So with this tool, the sim table is a tool. What it does is it gives us the opportunity to kind of look at past fires, where it started, with its final footprint, and give us an approximation of where it went and how we got to where we are today.
Two interesting points. This is the area right here where we were seeing the video from, that court area. So it puts it into real life perspective. You can see that that fire overtook the court and you saw the burning homes that were taking place there. Station 605 where you're sitting, it was the first due engine station into that fire. They were on the scene pretty quickly, and as you can see, it was pretty overwhelming. And that's not the worst possible fire scenario that could have happened that day. It was a bad fire scenario, but it certainly could have been worse. And we're at the fire station just down on the bottom here, not far away. So it certainly puts it into perspective. You're in what was the war room at the time that that fire was burning. This is where the op was being run from. So it's very real to watch on screen what was live here just a few years ago. So what got me focused on wildland-urban interface? I'm a fire protection engineer. It's not typical for fire protection engineers to get involved in wildland-urban interface issues. But it became very clear to me that this was something that was up close and personal. Steiner Ranch has a lot in common with Jester. Jester's on the top, Steiner Ranch is on the bottom. And if you look at those two, if I didn't tell you which was which, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So the only difference between Steiner Ranch and Jester, in my opinion, on that day was where the power line dropped. And we were just extremely lucky that it wasn't in Jester. Both neighborhoods are surrounded by wildland. Both neighborhoods have slopes and canyons. Both neighborhoods have homes and yards that are totally unprepared still for wildfire, although we've made a lot of progress. And the street in the video that I just showed you, when I saw that on CNN, I was watching my house and my street. And it was a real wake-up call to me. Even though I'm in the profession, I didn't quite get it until I saw it live and I put it into personal perspective. So I got Firewise, and that's my house. And you'll see that I've got clear space adjacent to the walls, as opposed to brush being adjacent to the walls. My walls are nicely, they're non-combustible fortunately, but a lot of people have combustible siding on the house. And I took out many tons of biomass out of my yard. I've got a lot of the traditional Austin cedar trees. And what's really interesting, this area adjacent to my house on the bottom right of your screen is actually an area that used to be really overgrown. And when I cleaned that area up, it actually looked really nice. So people kept saying, well, do you have to clear cut? Do you have to clear cut? Well, that's a great example of what's called a shaded fuel break. And what it does is it raises the combustibles in the crown of the tree off the ground and away from things that may be burning on the ground. So it's actually much nicer looking than it was before, and it's Firewise. That provides a really nice fire break between the canyon and my house. And you can see the pile of stuff in front of my house, and that's about a third of it in the photo. There was quite a bit of stuff that we took out, but I feel much better about what we did. And I am much more comfortable that I've done what I can do. My objective is when Austin Fire Department drives down the street, if there's a fire in our neighborhood, I want them to stop at my house and say, we can save this one. Because they're gonna be triaging homes in the neighborhood, and they're gonna quickly size up the people who have a home that's savable versus those that aren't. And I want them to look at mine and say, we can save that house. Jester got Firewise. We were the first community in Austin to do a really wholesale event like this in the community. We did what we named the 30 Feet for Fire Safety event. This initial event that we did, 122 out of the 900 homes in our neighborhood registered as participating. I personally think that's a very good percentage of homes to get people involved in something of this nature. We took out, in that first run, 79 tons of brush in 39 truckloads. And you look at the size of the truck that's there, that's a big truck. So our neighborhood took out 39 of those trucks full of biomass during this event. 68 of 122 properties that we had participating reported a total of 1,100 homeowner and contractor hours contributed. So it was voluntary participation for people who contributed to sign up on the website and tell us how much they put in. But out of the 68 homes, just those homes, it was 1,100 hours of time. And we actually did Firewise home ignition zone assessments on 50 homes at that event. We've since done over 100 homes in Jester through subsequent events, and we've got plenty more to do. But we definitely got people's attention. And 7 years later, the interest has diminished a lot because we haven't had a recent wildfire. And I thought to myself, how do you get people's attention on wildfire when there's no wildfires burning nearby? Well, of course, now we're seeing them in California, but that's still far away to a lot of people. So how do we get people in Jester to accept that there's a major fire risk in Jester associated with wildland-urban interface? And it's not just Jester, it's many neighborhoods in the Austin region. And the answer came when I first saw the sim table demonstrated at a recent event. And I looked at the sim table and I thought, well, the next best thing to getting people's attention by having a fire is showing them on a model like this what a fire will do. So I worked with Austin Fire Department. It's great that we were able to acquire the sim table for use around Austin. And I worked with the Austin Fire Department. We decided that this was a great opportunity to put this event together, to marry a program which shows people in our neighborhood what could happen in a wildfire. It does it in 3 dimension, it does it really quickly, and it's a very graphic image of the risk that we face. It's, again, not designed to scare people. It's hopefully a wake-up call that we have a risk that we need to deal with. So that's the objective. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Anderson to show you some simulations.
All right, so I guess to kind of the preface everything, it's a simulation. So it's going to use 3 big things: the fuels, what's available to burn, the topography, the slopes, and everything like that, and then the wind, which is going to be driving weather factor. Those 3 things come together and actually interact in a computer program that gives us an approximation of what we could expect in terms of how fast a fire moves or how large a fire grows in a particular bit of time. So through some of the back-end stuff with some of my team here, I have Nate K. Spear from the Wildfire Division, E.A. Henry, and then Battalion Chief Ramon there. We kind of have worked to change a little bit of the parameters to kind of show, kind of as Jeff talked about, a wet year. So as fuels, vegetation dries out, as we come into more of a drought situation, all of a sudden our stuff is more available to burn. So right now, what I'm going to do is kind of start a fire, literally using a lighter, on the table. So that's one of the other cool things about this, is that it is interactive. And as we have time at the end of the program tonight, I'll let you guys start fires on the table and kind of see what goes on and kind of tell me where your houses are. But so what I have right now is I have the Jester neighborhood, and it is. Sorry, do a reset. So one of the things, it is technology, and so what it does is it actually is reading what happens and how we interact with the table itself. So I just happened to stick my hand in the front of a sensor, and it registered as I had started a fire automatically. So the vegetation is kind of a more moist vegetation. We have winds that are coming out of the north at about, let's say 25 miles an hour. You can see my wind indicator up in the upper left-hand corner above here. And we happen to have some kids that are in a park playing with matches. And so So our fire starts. And you can see that the progression, the time on the bottom of the screen. We are about 30 minutes into the incident, and our fire is about 15 or 16 acres. It is slowly progressing through that wildland vegetation, moving with the wind as it moves towards the south. And this would be representative of what we would call a moist or wet year. We have a lot of water in our trees and our roots and the grasses and stuff like that. And so this simulation is kind of feeding off of a lot of information, and some of the opportunities that we have to kind of interact with it from the training perspective. I can place fire trucks on here. I can do protective actions in and around neighborhoods to kind of see what fire department actions will do to change that fire behavior. So we have been on this fire for approximately 4 hours now, and this is about where it's grown. It's stayed in the wildland.
Josh, for information purposes, can you go to info mode and then circle where Jester neighborhood is so that
Yes.
people can understand the relationship of the fire to the neighborhood?
Yeah, so we're gonna let the sim continue to play. So this is, I'm pointing on the board here, but I'm gonna actually stand in front.
That needs to be on the board so people can see it on the recording.
Okay.
You need to point on the table so it'll show up on the
It shows
recording.
up.
It shows up on
Yep.
there? You can see it? Okay, there you are, you can see. So, anyway, so this is 360. Go in there, can you see my,
Yep.
okay, so we have 360 along there. This is 2222. Here's Jester Boulevard, and here's the Jester neighborhood. So we're circling all this up there, and so Jeff's going around there, so. So anyway, so we have been on this fire for 9 hours in fairly moist conditions, which is probably what we'd see out there today, maybe another couple days from now after the rain and snow stops and starts to dry out again. So we can kind of play this thing out. I can make it go a lot faster, and we can see how long it would take if no fire department were to interact with this fire, how long it would take before that fire was to impact the Jester neighborhood. So we're already 18, 20 hours into this incident. Fire department will have been able to send resources to kind of start boxing it and slowing it down. So what I do want to do now is I want to go ahead and show you the same start, the same type of weather conditions, this wind out of the north, but I want to basically dry those fuels out. I want to give us drought conditions and kind of look at, so 1 day, 9 hours is when that fire is just now impacting the northern end of the Jester neighborhood. All right, so we'll stop it, and to change scenarios here real quick. So nothing's going to change on the table. You're going to see the exact same map, and what we're going to do is we're going to take it to fire mode real quick. And so, all right. So when I did the reset, let me set my winds out of the north, the same winds we had before. We have about 24, 25, so we're at 28. And so all we've done is basically now we've had a drought. So the same kids are out playing, and we have fire in the neighborhood. All right. So look at our time on the bottom. We're at 1 hour, 15 minutes in. Just by that one change alone, by changing from moist conditions to wet conditions, the simulation changes what we have going on as far as a response goes. So 3 hours is when we first make impact to the neighborhood. So the fire department will be sending as many trucks as they can, but an event like this, as Jeff mentioned, we're going to be spread pretty thin because there's probably going to be something happening out off of Highway 71. There's probably going to be something up in Round Rock, Cedar Park, Leander, Pflugerville, Lago Vista. All the different agencies are going to be having some issues there. So because of the way this has been painted, you can see some of the homes on the outside of the periphery have not been affected. Some of them have been affected. And some of the things that we haven't seen, the effects are what we saw in the CNN video, which is spot fires. Which are embers out ahead of the fire causing more small fires. So I'm going to add all these little spot fires out in front. So embers can project upwards of a mile in front of the main body of fire. So now that you have spot fires happening, what is it beginning to do to our fire behavior itself? It's basically starting to go even more. So we have parts of the neighborhood that are now burning. We have embers that are happening there. And you can see we're 11 hours into this versus the almost day and a half before we ever even impacted the Jester neighborhood itself. So that's just the change in that fuel from a wet weather to a drought condition. So I've got 3 more simulations, and like I said, they're just simulations. So we're going to go back to Jester 2. Or you say stay on Jester. No, sorry, Jester 1. And we'll reset the fire. So this is the same fuel condition, the drought conditions that we just talked about earlier. It's the same drought conditions, and all we're going to do is we're not going to put a wind component in there. So the weather is not going to be a factor. So it's just the fuel and just the hills and slope are going to be driving this. So again, without any wind influence, we'll start a small fire. It's still going to progress, but now it's kind of going to move in this amorphous kind of circular pattern. It's just going to continue to grow out. It's not moving in any particular one direction or another that's dominated. It'll follow the topography, which is basically fire wants to move faster uphill. So this is without any wind, and it's going in all directions. So we're at about 5 hours when it finally impacts, whereas with the wind, we had it sitting at 3 hours. Do you have questions right now? So I'd be happy to answer your question. It's just, like I said, you guys are seeing up here. Like I said, once I kind of run through these for videoing, stuff like that, we have some time at the end, everyone will get hands-on, and we'll get to kind of play with some stuff. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to reset this same fire, so we have the same conditions. And you saw some of the stuff earlier with wind. But now let's kind of add in that wind component that maybe is happening down in Ventura County right now. They have 70-mile-an-hour sustained winds that are pushing their fire. And so we kind of have some time marks in our head, and we kind of start thinking about evacuation and what we need for our homes, stuff like that. So I'm going to bring this wind component in, and I've maxed it out at 58 miles an hour out of the north. So, yep, I started a fire. 52, apparently that's as fast as it'll let me go without starting a fire. Alright, once again, start another fire. So with that wind, pushing at 52 miles an hour out of the north, same thing, it's just, so you can see the simulation. So we made impact on the neighborhood at 1 hour, 45 minutes in. So now you can see how wind plays a factor. So why we keep using that north wind is that predominantly the dry winds that we get come out of the north with these frontal passages. So on Tuesday earlier this week, and if you remember just a couple days ago, we had a dry cold front come through. It came out of the north, it brought cold dry winds out of the Rockies, so we had a drying effect. And it basically pushed cold air in front of it, and it happened to be very dry, and it moved at 15, 20-mile-an-hour winds, sustained all that afternoon. If we had a little bit warmer temperatures, we probably would have had the same kind of scenario play out without that fire piece going on.
And one point that I think you really need to emphasize in this, the burning embers that are flying through the air are not represented in what you're seeing in the fire growth here. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing that the area along Jester Boulevard, for example, is all is escaping the fire damage that's shown on here. But I can assure you that's not going to happen. Because if you have people that have the gutter litter or stuff stored under their deck or the basic safety problems that we see with homes that aren't properly prepared. One burning ember landing on a rubber mat or a cocoa mat in front of your front door, which is a wood front door, will burn your house down. So this is showing what is the major area of fire damage, but there are going to be a lot more homes lost in that area as a result of the ember storm.
Question.
Yeah, question.
Does this sum table make compensations when for the winds coming out of the south and that it's not as drying?
No. So the question for the video, everything that she was asking is, does the table itself take into account the humidity, the amount of moisture in the air, whether it's coming out of the south? Typically, when we get winds out of the south, they're a lot more humid than, say, winds out of the north. Fortunately, the table is not that sophisticated to be able to put in all of those specific inputs to really change or drive that. I kind of wish it was, but there would be a lot more learning for us to kind of buttons to push, so to speak, if that were the case. So we're trying to, like I said, very broad generalizations with this. So, and then the final simulation that Jeff has asked us to run is kind of talking about traffic. So I do have to spend just a moment here to reset the topography. So, and several people have asked kind of like, how does the sand get its three-dimensional shape? Somebody was asking if there was some sort of magnetics underneath the table that would shape it to make it work. And it's pretty much just us. Manual.
It's a digital process.
So what you do is you basically project the image back on the ground, and then we just build it up by hand. As we kind of work through this, give us just a second, we'll kind of create that three-dimensionality again. Yeah, I feel like a kindergartner playing in the sand sometimes. All right. So what we've done here is we've zoomed back into the Jester neighborhood, and so we're going to show you here now is a zoom feature of the neighborhood. So we're a little bit closer, and what this allows us to do is we have the ability to turn on traffic. So we can kind of start adding some cars to this. So we can kind of start talking about what are we supposed to be doing in that go phase. And we talked about Ready, Set, Go as a program. I know Jeff has kind of mentioned it, and we'll probably get into it again kind of after this, but how do we kind of see what happens when we add traffic to this mix? And so once again, this is a simulation. So what this is just kind of looks like little bugs on the screen. But once we kind of animate these, you can kind of start seeing all the cars will start following the speed limits of the streets and start working their way out of the area. So right now this is like 1 times regular speed. So traffic is coming in, moving out. Obviously there's not a lot of traffic on 360 and 2222. We aren't representing what's truly moving out there. But as we start adding more and more traffic, you'll start seeing a lot more congestion, a lot more vehicles moving around. And so when we start adding more traffic is starting to look like a little bit of afternoon traffic. Things are starting to move. And so one of the things that we can now is start talking about what happens if there is a fire. And so we'll start a quick fire on this one. I'm just going to run it with the laser. All right, so right now we have winds out of the north. Fire starts right here. So right now we're at very slow speeds. Not much is happening with our fire. But as we start to pick up the actual speed in real time, our traffic's gonna start moving a little more. What's that? Oh, thanks. Just put a little more fire in there, 'cause sometimes there's glitches on the table that,
Any wind?
yeah, I have wind.
That's the one you
Yeah,
got.
it's starting to go. And you can see there's a couple other yellow spots on the table where I accidentally put the marker. So,
So the point of this is the table is, it has the capability of dealing with traffic, but that's infant at this point. Can you put it on info mode, so I can point? So at 5 o'clock on a weekday, late afternoon, a hot summer day, Highway 360 is going to be totally stopped with traffic. 2222 is going to be totally stopped with traffic. The Jester neighborhood essentially only has two ways out from the front. And one is at the 2222 and Jester Boulevard entrance, and the other is where Lakewood Drive goes out to 2222. The back way out is Arterial 8, which is not a real road. It's shown on here as a real road, but it's actually not a real road. We've had several people in the area suggest that what we should do for wildfire safety is open up Arterial 8 so that people could get out the back way, because the entire back half of our neighborhood, this whole portion on the north side, is one way in, one way out. If there's a fire that comes across Jester Boulevard in the middle, the whole neighborhood in the back side is blocked.
It's a much
Richard?
So, yeah, okay. So anyway, so Jeff was talking about in this area here, can you see it
Kinda.
right there? There you go. So if we were to block some of this right here, you would have the same problem as what's happening. If you look at those little cars that escape down to Arterial 8, what happens when they get into the fire?
They get burned.
Catch on fire and they stop. So that's kind of, so for, a lot of people ask, we need to open up these highways to the green space. Well, this is what we run the risk of, is having a fire going across the green space, and now as every car comes into the next one behind them, everyone's gonna be stacking up, so to speak, and don't have anywhere to go.
The bottom line is that Arterial 8 would be a death trap in a wildfire circumstance. There's no way that people could be protected back there. They likely go that direction and get trapped. The other thing is, I know our neighborhood has expressed some concerns about speed humps in the neighborhood and wildfire safety relation to that. The problem we're gonna run into is the backup points at 360 and 2222, because of the traffic. Those areas are going to back up, and traffic is gonna back up all the way into the neighborhood. And where two streets come together, people who are trying to get out aren't gonna wanna let anybody in. People who wanna get in are gonna try to force their way into traffic. You're gonna have accidents. You're gonna have people abandoning cars as the plume of smoke and ember storm goes over the road. The first car that's abandoned, everybody else behind is trapped. So we have an issue that is really important to address, getting people out of the neighborhood quickly. And there is a tendency of people to think, well, I'll wait, I'll see what happens. In our neighborhood, if you wait on a hot, dry, windy day, you may not get out. And we certainly don't want to see anything like that happen. So that's the reason that I've personally not been supportive of trying to use the Arterial 8 option, because the way it cuts through the woods, it's probably more dangerous than trying to shelter in place in a house if your way out is cut off. But the message with respect to the way our situation is as a one-way in, one-way out neighborhood on the back half is get out and get out quick.
One thing I was trying to add while Jeff was talking about is we have the opportunity, we can add smoke, so you could see what that smoke would be, how it would be impacting different roads as well. And you can look, the size of the fire right now is about 123 acres, and we're an hour and 17 minutes into this incident. So, and you start seeing how all these pieces start to kind of come together. think we're at 20 minutes, Jeff, which you've allotted for the sim, so we'll wrap up and then we'll have the rest of it, we'll let people, we'll actually get the hands on the table itself. Go ahead and pause this, and we'll leave it sitting back here.
So, part of the program is trying to get your attention that we have a problem. And looking at history and looking at what you see on the sim table, it's pretty clear that there is a wildfire safety problem. So the question at that point becomes, well, what can I do about it? Well, the starting point that I get from people is, well, why don't building and fire codes deal with this? I mean, if we built a code, why doesn't the code make our homes safe? And the answer is, building and fire codes primarily focus on fires that start inside, not outside of homes. So the codes that Austin has adopted, the International Building Code and the International Fire Code, are primarily focused on protecting you from fires inside your home or inside the building, but not fires that start outside. There is a document called the Wildland-Urban Interface Code, which actually is a supplement to the fire and building codes that deals with the whole concept of fires starting outside in the wildland and exposing structures. And that code is actually being proposed for adoption by the City of Austin early next year. Captain Anderson's team has been working on the adoption package for that. And you're all aware that Code Next is a hot topic in Austin, the master planning code for the city. And the Austin Firewise Alliance, which some of you in the audience are members of the Austin Firewise Alliance, we are going to be presenting a resolution to the City Council asking them to consider wildfire safety as part of Code Next. And we have 3 specific recommendations, one of which is 2 ways in, 2 ways out of most neighborhoods to provide for not only residents getting out, but fire trucks getting in while residents are getting out. So anyway, the Wildland-Urban Interface Code is something that will hopefully be coming to deal with mostly new construction in the City of Austin, but it does have some provisions that deal with existing homes and buildings as well. So, you know, hopefully we've gotten you to understand there's an issue. What do you do? Well, really 4 steps that I've outlined here give you an idea of what I recommend to our neighborhood and other neighborhoods that they do to deal with the wildland-urban interface. And first you have to understand the problem, that there is a wildfire risk to your home and why. Then you have to learn what to do, and there's a program called Ready, Set, Go that I'm going to talk about real briefly tonight. Next you have to execute. I can't tell you how many times that I will go out and do a presentation and everybody nods their heads and they're all in perfect agreement that this is what they need to do, and then they go home and they answer the phone and move on to the next thing. And it's really important for neighbors to get engaged and to get engaged with each other, because the one other thing that this simulation doesn't really take into account is structure-to-structure fire spread. And your home is only as safe as your next door neighbors. If they've got issues and their home catches on fire, now your home is more likely to catch on fire, because you're not worried about the wildfire risk, you're worried about structure-to-structure fire spread. So execute. You've got to do something, and fortunately for Jester, at the end of the program, I'll tell you what our do something is going to be. And follow up. Maintain an ongoing effort and focus on the risk, and that's why we're here tonight, because Jester has had several events. We want to do another one, and we want to make sure that a lot of the neighbors participate in the one that we have coming up, because we've put a lot of effort into getting it scheduled. People who live in the hill country enjoy the beauty of the hill country. I wake up every morning and enjoy looking out the back window, and I've been in my home almost 20 years. It never gets old looking at the view. But I also look at the view with respect to understanding that there is a wildfire risk and I have to do something about it. And there are a lot of factors that we talked about on the sim table that turn a wildland into a wildland fire. And the weather we talked about: wind, humidity, temperature, amount of rain we've had, precipitation, topography. As Captain Anderson said, slopes increase the speed of fire spread. Certainly see that right now in California if you've watched any of the videos going on out there. And fuel, the type of plant, the content, the moisture content of the plant, the density and the continuity. And one of the things I posted on the Jester website is actually 2 things, are guides to planting in a wildland-urban interface area, firewise plants that are plants that will do a better job at surviving in a wildfire and resisting ignition, and then therefore resisting fire spread to your home. Another thing people really don't get about wildfire is it's not like a tornado or a flood. In a tornado or a flood, everything in the path is consumed. That's not true in a wildfire. In a wildfire, as I said, the ember storm, which blows ahead of the fire, is the biggest risk. And your work as a community and as a homeowner to take precautions to limit the impact of that ember storm on your property is what's going to determine in large part whether your house is going to survive or not. The risk is not a huge wall of fire in our area. The risk is not a huge wall of fire coming in and just consuming everything in its path. The risk is much more associated with the ember storm, and that's something that you can certainly do something about. So it's little things that can make a big difference to the home's survival. And the two things that homeowners need to focus on most are the yard immediately surrounding the structure and the area on the roof, and keeping things off of the roof that are combustible, like leaf litter. So embers that will blow in and around your house. There's a video that I got from the Institute of Business and Home Safety that I'll show you, and see if I can get that to run. So this home was actually built in their laboratory on a turntable, so it's going to turn around during the event. These folks are loading mulch into a device that's called the Dragon. It's aptly named as the Dragon, you'll see in a second. They're bringing in plants and mulch around the house with combustible exterior siding. There's leaf litter on the roof and in the gutters. It has vinyl gutters, which are combustible. And they fire up the Dragon, and it creates an ember storm. And this is what you will see in an actual wildfire here. And as we talk, those embers can go a mile ahead of the fire on a wind and land on your home. So if you watch this house as the ember storm is hitting it, you're seeing that the stuff that's accumulated in the gutter, dry leaf litter, is quickly igniting. The gutters will ignite. Things that are caught in the valleys on the roof will ignite. The material at the base of the home will ignite. Interestingly, when the wind hits it, an inside corner, such as the one you're looking at on the screen, becomes a fire tornado. And the fire gets very, very concentrated in that space. So that type of roof is a fire-resistive roof, and it will resist the penetration from small embers to getting into the attic. However, the ventilation to the roof, if you don't have screens over the intake and exhaust openings to ventilate your attic, embers will get into the attic and they will light the attic on fire from the inside. So you can see how an inside corner like that is a totally different fire behavior than the flat wall on the outside. And you know, that fire, as much as it's burning on the outside, still has not gotten into that house yet. But that's not to say that it won't, and it's not to say that it wouldn't in your house. I've seen a home that because of a rubber mat in front of a wood door, an ember landed on it, and the fire made entry through the front door. It can make entry through the screens. Certainly in preparation for a wildfire, you want to close all the windows. Double pane glazing is good. There's all kinds of things that you can do, but bottom line is the areas of concern are leaves, outdoor furniture. If you have foam padding on outdoor furniture that's combustible and an ember lands on that, foam padding is essentially the equivalent of solid gasoline. And it will start a very, very vigorous fire quickly. And then that fire drips to the floor and becomes a pool fire of burning plastic liquid, which will now ignite your deck, and that spreads into the house. Wood piles around the house, if you buy firewood or something, you want to keep that away from the house, not under the deck. Combustible exterior siding is certainly an issue. Open soffits underneath the soffit where the embers can get sucked in, because the attic is trying to ventilate from low to high, so it will pull embers in underneath the soffits with the air, and then the attic vent, if an ember lands up high, it can also go in the vents. So the program that was created to deal with this holistically is called Ready, Set, Go. And ready means getting your home and your family prepared. Set means be aware of the fire weather, because that's a big factor in what we saw tonight on the sim table. And then the defensive actions that you can take if there is a fire nearby, or if there's significant fire weather. And then go, which, as I mentioned, don't wait. In Jester, in particular, go means go now. So Ready, Set, Go began in 2010. Prior to that, the approach that we used to use in emergency response was called Stay or Go. And the idea was that we would have homeowners decide in advance, if there's a wildfire, are you going to stay and protect your property, or are you going to try to get out? You'd make that decision, and then you would act accordingly, that if you're gonna stay, you're gonna take defensive actions to get everything prepared and try to weather it, or go if you decide I'm not going to stay. Well, there was a fire in 2009, it's referred to as Black Saturday. That's an aerial shot of the east coast of Australia. And in that fire, they lost 2,000 homes and 173 people. 113 fatalities in or near the burned homes, and the rest, most of the rest, in cars from people who tried to get out too late and got stuck because it was a crush of traffic. So at that point, the whole approach of emergency response was changed to, we don't want to tell people to make a decision to stay or go, we want to tell people get out and get out now. So the preparation part, the ready. The first thing is the most important is to reduce the risk in the home ignition zone, which I'll talk about in a second. Second thing is have a plan to get out. Know what you want to take in advance. That's part of the planning process that homeowners need to think about what's going to be important to me and know right where you're going to go to get what you're going to get. People, you don't think about, what if my kids are home alone? If a fire's in Jester and my kids are living in the north end of the neighborhood in the back, and there's nobody there with a car, and there's a wildfire, what am I going to do to get my kids out? So now I've got to have a plan. Can I contact a neighbor? Do I know somebody who's on the street that's going to be around? How are my kids even going to know about the fire? Because maybe you've registered your phone for reverse 911, but did you register your kids? So they need to have a way to get out. Pets. If you have pets that are home alone during the day, what are you going to do about your pets? Who's going to go rescue them? If you think you're going to drive home into a wildfire condition to rescue your pets, you're sadly mistaken. You'll be lucky to get the fire trucks in there. So you need a plan for how are you going to get your pets out. Your possessions. People don't think about, what do I need if my house burns? Computer files, photographs, what can't be replaced? Those are things you need to know, what am I going to go get? You need a checklist. Backup computer files and papers that you want to keep off-site. If you lose your computer and your backup is at home, you lost your backup too if your house goes. The other thing, which is really probably the best tip that I can give anybody about this, is go through your house with a video camera and record everything. Open every drawer, open every closet, and record everything in your house. Because if you lose your home in a wildfire, you will not remember all of your stuff, which leads to the question of insurance. A lot of people say, well, if everything's damaged, my insurance company's going to cover the cost. They're not. What they will do is they will give you a certain amount, and then if you want the rest, they're going to tell you you have to document what you had, when you bought it, how much did it cost, and you need proof. You're going to need receipts. You can't just tell them you had a $500 suit in the closet that burned in the fire. You're going to have to be able to provide evidence of that. If you have that video, you've at least got a basis of argument. That said, I've talked to a person who lost their home in a wildfire. The process of going through that documentation, she had the documentation, the photo documentation. It took 3 weeks to go through those photographs and inventory everything that was seen in the photographs in a list on an insurance form to be able to make the claim. 3 weeks of a person's whole time just to make the insurance claim to get their money back. So if you think your insurance company is going to help you out, they may to some extent, but it's not an easy process. And you're going to be one of many if a lot of homes get lost at the same time. So make sure that you go home and you video everything and get that video stored someplace off-site. And have an evacuation plan or a to-go kit that includes some of your most important stuff, because if you only have seconds to get out, you might think, really, seconds? If you looked at what happened in the fires in California a month ago, it was seconds. It was get out now, or you don't get out. So it can happen that quickly. Important prescriptions and papers. The home ignition zone, the idea is to create the defensible space around your house. And in Jester, I mentioned that we've done these assessments. We have some of our residents that have worked with the Austin Fire Department. They've gone through training to be trained as home ignition zone evaluators. Our folks, in conjunction with AFD, will come out to individual homes and actually do an assessment of the home. And there's a link on the webpage on the Jester HOA website where you can actually request and fill out a form to have us come out and look at your home and give you tips on what you should be doing to prepare for wildfire and treat your home ignition zone. So this is really where the concept of doing your part comes in. If you do your part to protect the area around the home, then the firefighters have a much better chance of deciding in a triage situation to protect your house. So the things you can do, you can trim and remove trees and shrubs around the house. So you provide a fuel break between the wildland area and your house. Maintain a space underneath the trees to avoid ground fire climbing into the trees, the shaded fuel break that I showed you before. Keep the stuff out of your gutters and debris under the deck. This is a major issue that you have is debris, gasoline, wood, trash, furniture stored underneath the deck. If the deck is not screened underneath, one ember in that lights the deck, which lights the house, and you're gone. It's really that quick. So the set portion, keep an eye on the fire weather. This is very telling. The newspaper article on the right, September 3rd, 2011, the day before the Steiner Ranch and Bastrop fires. National Weather Service has updated the fire weather watch to a red flag warning, meaning critical conditions are either developing or will shortly. That was an awful, ominous threat in small print in the newspaper that people weren't paying attention to. And what's interesting is most people don't know what a red flag warning is. You know, you get a tornado warning, I know what that is. You know what a flash flood warning, I know what that is. What is a red flag warning? Red flag warning is essentially a wildfire warning. And it's unfortunate that most people don't know that. Fortunately, some of the weathercasters will explain it when they give that out. But it's a fire weather warning. So anyway, we could see what was potentially coming here. And when that happens, the things you want to do are get yourself ready. Execute your plan for your pets, your family, your possessions. You need to be prepared. Contact family members and let them know we need to be prepared. Where are you going to meet? Is anybody home? How are you going to get out? Some things you can do to prepare your home. You can wet your deck and the combustibles around the base of the home. There was one house in the Steiner Ranch fire at the end of the court that I showed you the video of. That house survived. The one that was the first one that the fire would have hit coming into that court. And the homeowner put a sprinkler on the deck, and it wet the deck and soaked it, and soaked the area underneath from the water running through the boards, and the house survived the fire, and the ones next door on both sides of the street burned. And that house was still sitting there. So, applying some water when that when the fire weather warning occurs, bringing in your patio furniture, again, that's highly combustible. All that stuff is literally solid gasoline. Putting out garden hoses and ladders for firefighters to use is a good thing to do. They may be short on equipment in those areas. If you leave your garden hose and your ladder out, it gives them more to work with. If you have areas of wood fence in this area of Texas, fire follows cedar fence like a wick right up to the house. So taking out a section of fence or opening a gate, I have a photograph in another program of a house where the homeowner opened the wood gate and the fire stopped at the gate and didn't make it to the house as it was following the fence. Steiner Ranch only had 10 minutes before they started evacuating. It's not much time to accomplish all these things. And homeowners need to be prepared because this is a photograph of what the road looked like from the people that tried to get out from the stay or go in California, Australia. And a lot of people who were in those cars didn't get out. And that's traffic backed up the 2222 intersection to just going up Jester Boulevard. The first car gets abandoned at the bottom of that hill because they can't turn into standing traffic on 2222 at 5 o'clock. And that's what Jester Hill is going to look like. That's what Buford's going to look like. And people are going to be on foot, just like you've seen in California, running for their lives. And I say Jester, it's not just Jester. It's many neighborhoods in this region that are on hills. So does it really work? And the answer is absolutely. And this is a tale of two neighborhoods. Steiner Ranch, September 2011, 23 homes lost and evacuation began in 10 minutes. And it would have been a lot more than 23 homes if it weren't for some really heroic efforts by the Lake Travis Fire Department. They put what we in the business call a heck of a stop on that fire. It could have been much, much worse. Belvedere, by comparison, another neighborhood nearby, it's a Firewise community. They used Firewise principles. Fire came through in July of 2011. No homes or lives lost. But look at the difference in the neighborhoods. those people took to heart Firewise principles in protecting the home ignition zone, and the fire went right through the neighborhood, and everything came out fine. So insanity is defined as repeating the same mistakes and expecting different results. And that's what we do with wildfire. Unfortunately, people don't pay attention to the level that they should, and we keep seeing over and over again these same major losses in wildfires. So what can Jester do? We're going to take action. We're going to have a 30 Feet for Fire Safety weekend on February 10th and 11th coming up. Homeowners that want to start before that are certainly welcome to do so, and you're going to be allowed to put the stuff out on the street. The pickup day for that is scheduled to occur on February 12th, which is a Monday. Thanks to Austin Resource Recovery for helping us with a special bulky pickup, so that on Monday 2/12 we'll hopefully have all that stuff taken out of the neighborhood. On the other hand, if everybody in our neighborhood does a really good job and they can't get it all on the 12th, I'm going to apologize to Austin Resource Recovery, and then I'm going to turn around and go woohoo, because we really made a big difference. If we can get that biomass out of the neighborhood, then we're really doing a great job at reducing our fire risk. So, two other things on our website. We have a link for our community to request the home ignition zone evaluation. So it's on the page where you would be watching this video. And lastly, we want to encourage everybody to sign up for the reverse 911 notification, and we have a link to that on the Jester HOA wildfire safety page on our website. It's really easy to sign up, and make sure you sign up all of your cell phones, not just yours, but yours, your spouse's, your kids, because you don't know who's going to be home at the time, and everybody needs to be notified. So with that, we actually took 1 hour, because we started 15 minutes late after we gave up on broadcasting. So at this point, certainly I want to thank the Austin Fire Department for their assistance in setting up the event. We did get some great news coverage during the course of the day. I think there's several TV stations that we communicated with that are going to be running the story for us, so that's really great. I certainly want to thank Lake Travis Fire for hosting us at Station 605, so thanks to Chief Abbott for setting that up. Brad Knowles and Carl Perry, who were our technicians that were here tonight, put in a tremendous amount of personal time to help us do the technical aspects of this, so thanks very much to them, and everybody in our audience for participating. So thanks very much to all of you for watching the video. And I wish everybody a good evening, and hope that you'll take this to heart and do some things to help improve fire safety in the Jester neighborhood and whatever neighborhood you're watching from. So thanks very much, everybody.